You know that drum beat you see everywhere now? It has a vibe, but it's difficult to put your finger on exactly what's happening. Sometimes you see it with the cowbell on the snare. Sometimes you see something and you're like, is that it? And you're not completely sure. Well, today we're going to break it down. And I don't just mean we'll play it slowly with the transcription on the screen. I mean we'll reverse engineer the steps of muscle memory it took for these players to start to think of beats like this. And in the process, we'll talk a little about what's happening when we learn a drum beat writ large. I'm Nate, people call me the 80/20 drummer, and let's get it started. And folks, today's video is brought to you by me, the 80/20 drummer. If you'd like a completely free transcription of all the beats we're going to talk about in the video today, all you have to do is click the link below the player and tell us where to send it on the next page. With that, on with the lesson. Let's first talk about what distinguishes these beats. They're not played with a continuous lead hand pattern like this. Or this. They're mostly linear, which is to say no limbs playing at the same time. In fact, quick breakdown. If I'm playing a normal funk groove like this, the two patterns are kind of unrelated and they overlap. Because they're stacked with one on top of the other, that's not linear. If I start a rudiment string with no flams and orchestrate the lead hand to the hats, that's linear, because every note occurs after another, in a line. And in theory, at least, no two notes occur together. So you could take something emblematic of Thomas Pridgeon like this, and say it's mostly linear. Same with this Richard Spavin beat. The concept at least gets us to the starting gate, then we just make music. So by definition, it's still mostly linear, even if the drummer plays some notes together. But these 30-second note grooves the kids are doing have something else, an accent pattern. So to my mind, it's not just linear, they also include something I call a funk clave. That means it's not all just paradiddles, which are technically linear, but just have half notes as their accent pattern. These hipster beats are using syncopated hat or lead patterns to riff off of. Now, based on everything we just discussed, let's have a look at this Roni Caspi beat. Is this in the category of beats we're talking about? Let me know in the comments, then I'll give my opinion at the end. To take a more direct path into these beats, I recommend learning the funk clave system. Which is to say, you could mess around randomly until you came up with this, as I tried to do over years, but hopefully this will save you some time. Full video on funk claves here, but for our purposes today, I want to skip to kind of the end of that video, the part where we create our own. So basically the challenge is we want to create cool syncopated patterns on the hats. The reason is because our ghost notes and backbeats love those, because there's lots of juicy space to fill. And when these are working, you get something that feels amazing and utilizes a chunk your body already knows, but also sounds cool. So we want these syncopated patterns. How do we get them? By memorizing the component parts. I'm going to give you 3 stickings. Right, left, right, left. Right, left, left. And right, left. The reason is those are the key ingredients to derive a clave type rhythm pattern with ghost notes automatically filled in. Here's just one example. Here's another. So I'm improvising by switching amongst those stickings with an ear toward cool melodies. You can try it too. If it helps, you can also use the toms. And eventually, you'll want to go back and forth so that the barriers between fills and groove are blurred away. As you do this more, try to get 2-bar patterns that loop. This will help later because most of these grooves the kids are playing are loops with variation. Got it? Okay, let's pause. Why are we bothering to do any of this? Why not just put the transcription up on the screen and just take a beat from one of those drummers and play it at half speed and scroll the transcription and you just learn it like that? Well, did you learn languages by just memorizing dialogue? Hang on, don't answer that. I know that you can technically do that and that's how kids do it, but the aim here is to get you to be able to improvise this type of thing in way less time than if you just learned it ambiently. And what you'd probably discover if you transcribed this beat and learned it, then I asked you to improvise something of your own creation in this style, is you'd probably struggle. But if I asked you to play something you're already familiar with, you could probably do it. That's because chunks. You don't have to think kick snare anymore like a total beginner would. What these drummers are doing when they improvise these linear funk patterns is the same thing. Their chunks are just bigger and more sophisticated. And that's why we do this whole deconstruction thing, to kind of crash course you through how you might assemble some chunks of your own. Got it? Next step, adding rim shots. So recall we've been switching among these idioms to make a few loops. Those are chunks. Next, we're going to make that chunk and add something else, rim shots. For now, let's just do the standard 2 and 4. And we'll maintain the hat pattern and obviously remove notes when we're playing the rim shots. We'll also eliminate 2 other things. Any ghost note that would require a soft loud like this, and any group longer than 3 ghost notes. Here's the result. One more program note. You may not completely know what to do after just one viewing of this video. You may want to watch this repeatedly, with the free transcription you can download below, and start messing with it yourself. You may take months. It may be the jumping off point for a different way into this that you create yourself. Or maybe you're a casual viewer just watching this at the kind of TED Talk level to see an example of how we might deconstruct a beat. Either way, this stuff is complex, so don't feel bad if you don't master it after just one viewing. All right, program note over. The final stage of assembly is adding the kick drum. We can do this in a few ways. You can do things like grid exercises for your coordination. But for our purposes today, and to mirror the beats the hipster drummers are making, I'd just find a musical place to layer in the kick drum. Here's one example. Here's another. We might want to modify our ghost notes again. A decent, though not perfect rule of thumb is to take out a ghost note on the snare that would happen at the same time as a kick drum, but to leave in a hat note or backbeat that would coincide with it. Here's what that sounds like again. Okay, so we've hopefully delivered you to the door of creativity. Remember, these rules and algorithms are to get you to the point where you have enough chunked to start messing around. After a certain point, your musical instincts can be your guide, but only if you've developed them enough for the situation. Finally, let's return to that Roni beat. Is it part of this category? I'm gonna go ahead and say yes, and I'll tell you why. You might be like, but Nate, her hat notes are on downbeats, which isn't syncopated. And I'd be like, good point, but maybe there's something you haven't considered. From the POV of the muscle memory, this is accessing the same chunk. There's probably some rhythmic context we could put it into that would make it syncopated. But let me demonstrate a syncopated beat using basically the same muscle memory. Which means we now have a better definition for this type of beat, albeit a harder one to put into words. But it's beats that are offshoots of this algorithm we've just reverse engineered.
And that's how you get the gig.
Is that actually how to get the gig? Leave a comment, or maybe don't. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this one. And as usual, as I've been saying throughout, if you'd like the completely free transcription of all of the core elements in assembling this stuff, you have but to click the link below the player and tell us where to send it on the next page. Dude, this has been real. Always enjoy these. See you again real soon in another lesson of the week.
Again! Again! You don't want to choose the wrong, that's how you get the gig point, because then you're just throwing your stick for nothing.